Hello everyone, welcome to a new type of video that I've not done before on this channel. This is going to be a team of the tournament video. So I've recruited the ever insightful and wise ChrisTFer. We're going to construct our respective teams of the tournament from the recent Esports World Cup, and then we're going to try and make a sort of combined best five from our two teams of the tournament. But we did think it would maybe be a little bit too easy from this tournament because it would just be Crazy Raccoon, maybe Crazy Raccoon with a couple of Toronto players in, and if we just did that maybe wouldn't be very difficult or very challenging. But me and Chris, we're not scared of adversity. So we went all the way to the other extremity, and we are going to limit our team of the tournament to one player per team, which means we have to select our favourite Crazy Raccoon player or our most impactful, as well as maybe filling out the rest of the team of the tournament with some people you might not expect. So, if you've watched any of my videos before, you'll know he's been talking for a little bit now, so he's probably about to show us a spreadsheet. So, here is said spreadsheet. So, you can see we've got me on the left, Chris on the right, and we're going to go through and sort of just say a sort of top three for each role for each tournament, from the tournament. And then we'll kind of see who else we considered and where we sort of go from there. So, do you want to reveal your top three tanks, Chris?
You want to do top three? Okay. So I think we're probably going to be agreed on number one. I think someone probably gets it. I think the difficulty that the Crazy Raccoons and maybe also the Zeta Division guys are going to get is because they split play time. It's harder to justify them being in there. Whereas I think someone like Toronto's story of the tournament was very much a classic flexibility. So we could just suck off someone because he also was flexible. I think I'm going to go for number two is Hambin. I think he played pretty well across this tournament. I think he obviously got a lot of play time. I think he was pretty integral to Falcons meta read, and I think obviously he's probably maybe the best diva that there is. And I'm going to go Max at number three because I feel like Max doesn't get a lot of love, but maybe probably. I mean, this was the most he's probably played in the tournament, and he pretty much won all of his maps, I think. So.
Yeah, I'll reveal mine. We're super aligned on this, so obviously someone is in there. Hambin is in there as well. And I actually went the other Crazy Raccoon way and picked Jumbin here. I thought Jumbin was more impressive. I feel like I have this problem with Max all the time, where he comes in and he keeps being successful, but I'm never blown away. Whereas I feel like when I watch someone play, I'm like, wow, he's had such an impact for his team here in terms of the impact he's had and in the result. Whereas Max just sort of comes in, does his job on what is probably the best team in the world by quite a margin at this point. How do you exactly, how do you rate maybe the worst player on the best team, even though he's still clearly quite good? Whereas I feel like when Jumbin comes in, there's an impact there, he makes a difference.
Yeah, I feel like the problem with Crazy Raccoons this tournament is I think everyone expected them, especially from scrims, to win so hard that I'm almost not impressed with any of their performances, It was just like, no one, like maybe Shu would be like the example of he had a really, really solid series tournament, but actually everyone just kind of knew they were going to win, and everyone just did. They just did good, They just played, which makes this video like slightly trickier, I think.
Yeah, well, I think this is maybe a longer topic that we won't get into now, but I almost think that actually I don't think Crazy Raccoon's got that much better between this tournament and previous tournament. Everyone else just got slightly worse. So
and
the gap feels bigger.
The format, like they were already playing hero bands anyway because they just play every comp imaginable. So the format really didn't.
Zero impact on them at all.
That's why they were banning Roadhog and shit. Because I'm not even thinking about bands. Let's just play,
Yeah. So all right, pretty similar so far. We're on the same page. What role do you want to hit next?
We can go down in order, maybe.
All right, hit Flex DPS. Who's your starter, or who's top first nomination?
Yeah, so it's tough because we'll talk about it when we get to the team of the tournament because it's gonna we have to really Okay, so I think maybe I think I might go number one Stalker. I actually think he played pretty well. I think his May was pretty good. I think that he was maybe the standout from Falcons. And even though I was kind of disappointed with Falcons, it still felt like Falcons series against Crazy Raccoons, that was the closest Raccoons were to losing, right? Actually some of those maps are unbearably close. I'm gonna go Sugar Free second because I actually think this was Sugar Free's tournament. His every single time the camera went to him with post bomb, he always stuck it. He felt incredibly good. And then I'll go Hitscan third because it feels pretty. Maybe it's already looking hot takes because I don't have any Crazy Raccoon players outside of third, considering they won, but obviously that'll change.
So I think I've gone lots of similar. I had Hitscan as well, just because I mean, he just continues to just look like the star player. I think if it wasn't for the fact that the rest of this team was so stacked, he would be like the undoubted carry, you know? We'd be talking like, remember when Proper had that first season on Shock and he was just like the best player by a mile? I feel like Hitscan's got the same quality. He's just surrounded by superstars as well. And then similarly again went Sugar Free. Maybe no surprises there. I think there's maybe still a few question marks. I think we talked at like the Dallas Major about like, oh, we had to play a lot of Genji and Pharah. Didn't feel like the same star player we normally get. But here playing Tracer and Echo as well, in the few times he needed it, actually just felt like the star player, toe-to-toe with any of these other elite players. And then third, this is maybe where I branched off. I actually went Kevster. I feel like this was like a Kevster redemption.
Was so good. I agree. Yeah. I think he's fourth on my list. I think out of the teams in the 4th to 8th, like the 5th to 8th bracket, I think he was the one that was like the clear like carry of his team. I felt like, so I actually think it's like a. All right, I think Stalker played super good, to be honest. Like actually, like he was like. When I watched Falcons, it was like I felt like he was their best player, but I also think Kev was clearly Ence's best player. I don't think Ence's tournament was too bad either. You know, like they probably would have took maps against. I guess I don't know. Maybe they would have took maps against other teams if they didn't get the Crazy Raccoons.
The death sentence in the
quarterfinals. Yeah, when Moon really... comes in and just kills an opponent, just like gets to choose who he kills.
It's hard because I feel like Ents had like kind of a good tournament, but they also just got like. Rolled by Crazy Raccoon and rolled by Zeta in groups. So it's kind of like exactly hard. But I feel like this whole year, it feels like Kev's started really strong, then maybe kind of trailed off a little bit. And it back to classic carry Kev, drag his team up a couple of notches. Unfortunately, Crazy Raccoon are still 18 notches above him, so it was no way past. But
I also think
impressed.
Honorable mention to Backbone too, because I actually think every performance he had on his heroes, I think he was really fucking good. I think he was just unlucky. Obviously, it's really hard to justify him being like anywhere near the top 3 with the playtime and like a top 8 finish. Yeah. But I actually think like he had one of his best tournaments in a while. So I had him down on like 4th or 5th maybe.
The only other player I considered, and again, this maybe they kind of fell off based on where they finished, but it was Leave actually. Because when I was watching these LGD games, I was like, they're actually tragic, but they're tragic as a team. Leave is still doing God's work in the backline on Trace. You know, he's still doing putting in these big carry performances. It just feels like LGD's entire read on the meta and the bans and all of this held all their talent back so much. So I think if it was
situation, you know?
if it was a situation where LGD went a little bit further, I think, you know, in terms of like raw ability, was Leave really far behind a lot of these other players we've mentioned? I think not at all. I think really still in top form. So then Hitscan, which I guess is maybe a little bit of an interesting one this tournament because there was quite a few teams who lent out of Hitscan, you know, like players like Kai and Sparker as well. We maybe saw way less than we're used to seeing. So where did you go in terms of Hitscan player?
So I went Lip first, probably pretty simple. I went Merit second. I think Merit did have a really, really solid tournament. And then I've probably just gone Proper third, but I didn't feel great about the pick, you know. I think he played okay, but I couldn't see anyone else that you could justify over Proper.
So I went similar at the start. No surprise that like Toronto and Crazy Raccoon are filling these. I actually went Merit above because I thought Merit in groups, whatever. But again, you ramp up the pressure, you ramp up the adversity for Merit, and something just clicks. Something lines up in his brain, and he just kind of hits like
give a shit or something.
He hits a turbo mode that has not been seen up until this point, and maybe not even really seen up until this point this year almost. And he just kind of hit a new level, and I think actually probably got the slight edge even of Lip in some of those like key like Widowmaker battles. But unfortunately, I mean, Crazy Raccoon or Crazy Raccoon, you know. So like if. In the hypothetical world where Falcons were to sign, well, I say were to sign a player, but if you were the Falcons boss and you had infinite money, I feel like Merit is actually the player you add to that DPS line if you can, even though it's probably not realistic. Not Happy, no. Unfortunately for Happy, but in theory, I think this was like a top class land from him.
I considered doing the same, but then I realized like my team would actually have like 0 Crazy Raccoon players in first position, and it's like, yeah, that can't be right, you know. So I had to give it to Liv.
That's fair. And then third, I really struggled with this one as well because I'm actually quite a believer in proper Hitscan. I think he's really is as good as a lot of these other players, and you know, can compete. But I actually went Shy in the end because I feel Shy was actually.
I was thinking about it too, but I just couldn't justify a top 12 player. But he was really good. Like,
he was really good.
Widowmaker performance versus proper was insane too, right?
Yeah. You know who else I even considered? If it wasn't for other stronger tanks, I even considered Gushui. I thought he actually had a very good tournament for a guy who we were worried would be in like the Winston one trick. I think he actually demonstrated he wasn't a Winston one trick at this LAN. But then I also find it really hard to marry up the idea of like, oh yeah, Leave, Shy, and Gushui, they all played great. Where did they finish? 8th, and they barely won a map. Great.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. 12th even. Yeah. So I was like, but I feel like Shy was one of a few players who, at least after groups, actually just dedicated to the hit scan, right? Like, I think what's true of all of these teams we kind of mentioned is they've all lent into the hit scan more than some other teams, like maybe like Ents or something, you know?
Yeah.
Or you guys as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like there's also, it's fair to say, like, Lip and Merit are in the, like, they're in their own category, you know?
Yeah. Because I think Flora didn't justify getting into the top 3 either, so...
No. Yeah, okay. All right, then. Flex support, I think one name is going to be outrageously obvious in this.
Yeah, so I went first Shu.
Hot take.
I think, yeah, maybe not that hot take. I then went Finn second, because I actually think Finn had... He was their best player. Like, I actually think Finn had a really, really, really good performance. And then the third one, I was a little bit stuck again. I really didn't want to give it to either of Falcon's backline, because I don't think they played well. So I just went RuPaul. But I was like, I could be willing to be argued out of this one because I think RuPaul played fine, but I don't think he was like, he was maybe like the least impressive part of the Toronto run. But I just don't know who was better than him, you know?
So, well, you asked to be argued out, and this is probably the time to reveal now. My picks are actually identical to yours in this one. I think big Finn believer as well. I think everyone talks about the jump in Hitscan redemption from Shock. But I think Finn has actually had his own redemption arc as well from that last season on Shock, and I think super impressive on everything he played.
His Ana especially was like, it felt like it was
it was a carry
the most
hero.
Madiest.
And then I think, I don't know, I was actually really impressed by RuPaul. I don't think it was like a super hard carry performance, but I think when you talk about like, can he just be effective on all the heroes? The answer was yes. Like Ana, Bap, Kiri. I guess it was only the 3 main ones he played, but it felt like he was effective on all of them. The only person who's close, like, for me, it was between RuPaul and Fielder. Because I thought Fielder actually had a pretty good performance, all things considered. Even though his team kind of, like, didn't do that well. It's a little bit hard, because I think a lot of teams, I think this applies to Falcons and this applies to SSG as well, had a bad tournament redeemed by a good loss. Or, like, a good performance, but lost against, like, a stronger team. So it's really hard to marry up, like, what do you do with the players who might have had one good series in an entire tournament, but it was the most important series of the tournament type thing. So I feel like Fielder gets like a lot of points back for that, but I think it's really hard to take it away from RuPaul when he just consistent, team did well. Do you ever like remember watching Toronto and think, oh, the backline's really screwed him here or something?
No, yeah, I think you're probably right. Like I think most of our flex supports or supports in general, I noticed like bad performances, whereas RuPaul I think was just on everything that was needed to be played, did his job to a level that allowed them to get second in the most important tournament of the year. So probably hard to argue it too much.
All right, then everyone's favorite main support.
Okay, so I actually think that I've gone Vega number 1.
Ooh.
I actually think Vega has an unbelievable performance. I think he solo carried the game versus China. I think like he was the difference across like many maps. I think everyone will talk about someone's flexibility, but actually having the flexible main support was almost the key to this tournament. And I think Vega actually performed amazingly. I've done second Chorong. You could probably argue Chorong was better than Vega, but I really, really, really think Vega's performance this tournament deserves some justification. And then third is really tough. I really think Violet was underwhelming it a lot of times. I think Chio's lack of flexibility was a real like killer for them. I've gone Gala. I might be absolutely fucking cooked here, but I actually think VP were pretty impressive this tournament. And I think that like Gala's hero pool, they won on Lucio maps, which is pretty impressive. And obviously their double flex is important. It feels really weird to put Gala in this list amongst the players he's doing. But I'm interested to see who you put. I don't know who I think had a better performance, because I really, really think Violet was, not just because of the Ajaxes, but just in general, I really don't think Violet had like the greatest tournament. And I think Chio is actually becoming like a soft problem for Falcons. Yeah.
Like I recently watched the series against LGD back in groups, and it was just like, the reason they lost was that last map especially was just 2 horrendous Ajaxes from Chio, and it's like you combine that with the lack of flexibility, it really becomes an issue. So I did go Chirong first, because I just thought I always feel with main support, I think I even do this when you like ask Lucio players, like, what's the most important thing? Is like, just don't feed, you know, just be minimize mistakes. And I feel like Chirong actually is that play, you know, minimal mistakes. I think Vega was really close, I agree. And I think it's important to note, like, while the Alari is like a hero he can have a large impact on, I actually thought his Lucio was really fine as well. Never felt like a problem for Toronto. And then third, I actually went Violet. So, which may be a more standard one, because I think I had the same problem where I was like, I was considering Astro for a bit. I was like, is Astro actually just put in a decent performance? But then he also has like the flexibility issues that I think like Chio and stuff fall into. Chio, I think, had a bad tournament. And then where else do you even go, you know? And I think at least Violet has like, when Violet is on Ilari, huge impact actually. When he's on that hero, I think he does become like a carry in the same way Vega or Gala does. But I don't think Gala's like the craziest shout, really. When you consider some of her performances.
Deserves some, because they actually, I mean, they won their group without losing a game. They beat like some pretty good teams. And I feel like the double flex comp was obviously going to be their win condition, but they also, I mean, they beat us on Lucio maps, and I think they, generally speaking, like did fine in the Lucio mirror. So yeah, I was less confident about it, but I actually think he is another one that like in this like 5th to 8th category probably deserves a little bit of credit.
Yeah. All right then. So we've got our top 3s for each thing, and now this is where it gets tricky, because in these top 3s we can just pick whoever we want. We can just keep saying, yeah, Crazy Raccoons are good, and everyone will agree with us. But now we have to pick our respective teams of a tournament where we're only allowed 1 player from each team. So there's a few different philosophies you can approach this with. Do you just try and pick the best team overall so the end roster looks the strongest? Or do you just have to do something like, Shu's the MVP of a tournament, so he has to go in? So there's different ways to approach this. So what was your thinking coming in?
The way I did it was I reverse engineered it. So I had to pick someone from the 5th to 8th category, right? Because one of them has to be in. So I picked the strongest player from the 5th to 8th and then worked up like that. So So ironically, even though Shu was the MVP, Shu doesn't get into my team of the tournament given the parameters, because I felt that like the next best option for flex support was good enough to justify it over, you know?
Okay, yeah. So let's start with a tank reveal then. Should we go top to bottom again?
Yeah. Okay, I went Hambin. I felt he had a pretty solid performance. I obviously want to give the Toronto slot to somebody else. I think it's maybe harder to justify other Falcons members, maybe minus Stalker in this team. So I think given that one Falcons player needs to be in, I felt like it feels a bit harsh to someone, but I think, yeah, I've gone Hambin.
I went someone on the basis that I thought we talk like our top 3s, but I think someone has the biggest gap between him and the rest of the candidates. So I felt it was like unjust to not let someone go in, you know. So I went someone straight at the top, and just realized because he was like the most impressive performance. Everyone else on Toronto, because like Sugar Free, Merit, Vega all have great cases, I think, to be in this team, but they are all sacrificed for someone, which I guess is starting to become a bit of a career norm for some of these players.
Yeah.
Right, Flex DPS then.
So then Flex DPS. So this is where I've gone. So I've gone Kevster. I felt like he was the best of the rest outside the top 4. So he was actually the first person that I put in the team, like based on how I tried to like structure this team. I I think he clearly played at a level where he could have easily finished top 2 or win this tournament, given his performances. I think he was by far and away the best player on his team. And I think it seems pretty reasonable to put him in.
So for me, this is where I actually spent the Crazy Raccoon spot, because I feel like in some of the other categories, there's like better candidates, you know, like I think maybe we're both thinking maybe the same thing in Flex support when we get to it in terms of better candidates. But I feel like Hitscan, criminally underrated somehow. Even though he's like, everyone thinks he's the best, I feel like he still doesn't quite get enough praise, you know, like everyone talks about Lip being the GOAT, but I feel like actually to have a DPS player you can put on any hero, and they don't just play that hero, but they will carry the match for you. And do that consistently, I think it's like, yeah. I think he's absolute top quality. Hard, yeah. So that's where I spent the spot. So I feel like yours obviously is going elsewhere. So
yeah. So ironically, my Crazy Raccoon spot, I feel like I spent it fucking. I don't know. I feel like I guess the nature of reverse engineering it is you just have to go obsessed. So I actually went Lip for my Hitscan. This feels like he was like maybe like the 3rd or 4th best player on his team. So it feels kind of weird, but I actually feel really good about like where I spent my other slots in support. So I ended up just taking Lip here. I felt like Merit was an option, but then I feel like you're really unlucky to someone on Vega if you put Merit as your Toronto player of the tournament.
Yeah, I think there's a real argument in like a limitless, like no limit on team of a tournament. It could just be like a Crazy Raccoon plus Merit on someone or something. Yeah. But I think when it comes to this one I really struggled with, because I went back and forth with like Shy and Proper as well, because again it was like, where do I put them in these respective things? So I went Shy ultimately because of the same reason. It was between Shy and Proper, right? Because they both kind of fitness gap. But ultimately, it feels a little bit weird, I think, because he finished so low. But also, I didn't know exactly where else to put it. And when I did like the Shy v Proper head-to-head, I was like, well, Proper got further in the tournament. But Shy did feel like the better Hitscan when he was on it, you know? So Shy is probably actually like quite boosted just by the nature of this format. But yeah, that's where I went in the end.
So then I'm guessing we're going to be the same here. I think Flex support, I went Finn. I think this feels like he was, in my opinion, clearly Zeta's best player, and Zeta obviously had like a hell of a tournament. And obviously, whilst it feels weird to not put the MVP in the team of the tournament, I think given the parameters, I think that this seems like the most logical choice for me.
So then I've also done Finn as well. A lot of the same reasons. It felt like, in a similar reason to how I felt someone almost justified his pick because he was such a standout amongst the other tanks. I think Finn was actually a standout amongst his team in terms of the impact he had. Again, it felt really hard to justify any other player from Zeta Division being in this team of the tournament. Which means I think I can, through process of elimination, means your main support must be
Vega. I almost wanted to glaze Vega a bit, because obviously like the community's been shitting on him pretty epically, and I think actually for him to come out in the biggest tournament of the year and actually I think to be honest, Kasaurus as well, like we've obviously participated in a lot of the shitting on Kasaurus for not picking Ilios or whatever, but I think a lot of his decisions got justified at this event, like the roster decisions, like the way
merit
practice, the flexibility, like everything got justified here, and I think that's nowhere is that more true than in Vega, you know. Like, I think Vega ended up being an incredibly important part of their kit. Like I said, like I really think there was 1 or 2 series in this tournament when Vega was clearly the MVP, like actually carried the game. I remember that Li Jiang Tower, which should be an impossible Lari map versus China, and he just, every fight was just killing people. Like people had comments, oh, like does Vega choke on land? That's clearly doesn't. I think everything that he was asked to play, played well, and his Alari was it the best at the tournament? Maybe it was the best Alari at the tournament. Like, he was pretty up there. And I think that, maybe someone can feel slightly hard done to that he's not Toronto's pick, but I actually think Vega was incredibly impressive this event.
So I've already spent my Toronto pick. I've spent my Crazy Raccoon pick, and I actually went here, but kind of like how you went with Kev's with Flex DPS. I actually went Gala here as well, as I needed to sort of branch out, because I feel like the team that's obviously been robbed in my top 5 is Falcons, which is why I considered putting Proper in. But I was like, it doesn't make logical sense for me to say Shy was a better Hitscan than Proper, but then put Proper above him in the team of the tournament, you know, just for like Falcon representation type thing. But yeah, I thought Gala was super impressive. I think in the same way, you see like some players play Alari, like Astro probably sits in this category. I think even Chorong sits in this category where they will play the Alari because that's the role they need to play for the map or for the ban situation. But you see the good Alaris, and I think like Vega, Gala, and I think Violet sits in this as well. They become a huge influential factor in their team's victory and a huge sort of carry option. And I think Gala really filled that out, and I think a really important player for Virtus Pro, and a big part of the reason they did so well.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think obviously, like, to be fair to Gala, I think he probably will be pretty pleased at how the meta ended up going, considering they've been playing this like Papillary since before it was like buffed. So like he obviously high rolled it, but I think he's like very much on people's radar as like the next up and coming EU support. I think that VP's roster, they'll actually be pretty pleased with how it's been built.
So how do you feel about your team now? You've got it in front of you. You've locked it in. You're like, this is okay. No, I'm happy. I think
my team is better than yours. I think you have like the higher highs, but I actually think like you have some like dips. Whereas actually my team on average is all like they all had like 8 to 9 out of 10s. I maybe didn't get the 10 out of 10s. But I think if you were to power rank them, I think that my team makes more sense than yours.
I think what's happened with my team is I've done is I've put some things in as like, and this is like a non-negotiable, you know, like, so someone has to be in. It's like, well, Hitscan then has to be in as well, right? Then Finn has to be in. And then what's happened is I've just sort of, you know, where you said you reverse engineered it? Yeah. I reverse engineered it, where I just put like the obvious picks in first and then tried to fill
it.
So then I tried to fill the gaps, which is why we maybe look at someone like Shy and think like, he almost feels like a bit of a stray name amongst these 10, you know? So now we have to try and combine said rosters.
But we have to do it within the parameters, right? Within
the parameters, yeah. So which means we have to sort of
I feel like it's almost impossible to do. We just have to like pick. I mean, I guess we can try. Because I feel like the way it's going to go is if we compromise, we're going to get to like main sport and we've already used all our slots, you know? Well, I guess we can put Finn in, right?
Finn's the easy one, yeah. Well, I feel like we start putting names in, and then it's literally editable. This is an editable spreadsheet, so we can always change our mind and correct. Because I feel like the real problem I have is I feel like the gap between someone and Hanbin was massive in this tournament. So I feel like someone has to go in.
Okay, then let's do someone then.
Because then that means obviously Vega is out.
Okay, so here's what I think. If we do someone, I think we should put Chorong at main support. That's what I think. Even though had it.
Okay.
Because I think this makes more sense. And I feel like we can make DPS work, you know? Like,
so
we could easily do Stalker as Flex DPS or Kevster and not feel bad about it, right?
Yeah. I guess the only thing with Stalker is, would we ever want anyone else from, like, would Proper be the Hitscan? Because even as I'm like looking at it,
now the Hitscan, like, we're back to the Shy conundrum, right?
Yeah. It's like, is it really Shy? Or if we change Stalker for...
we can't do Lip.
But if we change Stalker to Kevster, we could do Proper, but does that really feel significantly different? I mean, it feels like a better roster on paper because you get to look at the name Proper and go, oh yeah, that's Proper. But I don't know if it actually truly reflects. Because I think Proper had a fine tournament, but by his standards, it was just another tournament, I think, you know?
Did good performance, better than Kev? Forget everything else. Who actually played better? Maybe Kev played better.
I thought like Stalker had a good Mei, but he was also playing Mei in like the nice matchup to play Mei, you know, and he kept getting nanoed and stuff in a bunch of these fights. I feel like Kev was just like an organic carry performance, you know?
Yeah.
Just play your hero, do really good.
Yeah, maybe I'm Stalker Shy pilled. Was Shy good on anything except the Hitscan? Was he not like, was his tracer not diabolical? Or am I misremembering that?
No, so LGDs, I was going to say their fortunes turn around, like they didn't just go on to lose the next game anyway, but their fortunes did improve when Shy they just kind of defaulted to essentially what Toronto did, you know what I mean? Just said, Merit will not be playing Flex DPS. He's going to be on Hitscan, and we're just going to roll with it, you know? LGD seemed to make that decision after their loss to Twisted Minds, and it seemed to pay dividends for Shy as well. But is the problem with Hitscan that really that Lip and Merit just sit in their own category?
Yeah,
but
I mean, there's no argument for Shockwave over Shy. No,
I feel like if I was gonna go to like go down the Virtus Pro and like who had the best performances, it's Sauna and it's Gala.
It's a shame we can't do 2 Flex DPS. I actually would feel better. I feel better about Stalker and Kev, but I don't know if that's allowed.
Because then the implication would be we're essentially putting Kevin on Hitscan and then didn't see him rocking too much Hitscan this tournament.
Yeah, I suppose. But if there's a tournament where there was like tons of like double Flex DPS,
is another alternative is we do your Lip pick and we sacrifice Churong and then just do Gala.
I mean, yeah, this maybe on paper makes more sense because at least it matches with where everyone finished. I feel like I almost prefer it the other way though. I almost like the Finn Choron backline with Shy. I actually think for whatever reason I feel like the other way is better. Is there a team I'm forgetting? Who else? M80 obviously not. Peps no. Who else got knocked out in the round of 12?
Twisted Minds.
Yeah.
But I don't think Quartz had a consistent. He had like a couple of games or a couple of maps where it was like, oh yeah, this is Quartz. But it wasn't like the consistent carry where we've maybe seen him do in previous tournaments. So VP, not really. So obviously Kai didn't even play that much in the end.
Yeah, hard to do it.
Spark didn't play that much
Spark
in the
didn't
end.
play as much as probably justified.
I mean, Spark looked good when he was in, right, to be fair. Like, I remember a couple of those Ash maps, even against, like, VP and stuff, you know. He seemed to be doing a lot. But really hard to justify. But this is why we get the Lip and Merit conundrum, right? Because it feels like one of them has to be in, but then where do we sacrifice for role elsewhere?
See, I'm telling you, if you pick Hanbin over someone, you get loads of flexibility, you know? Like, it actually opens everything up.
Oh, okay.
We could put Hanbin in, yeah, and then you can take you can put like you can either just put like Kevster or like you can put like Merit here.
That's what I was thinking. Is like we put Merit in,
Kevster
like,
here if you feel like it, and then put Chorong back in. It actually feels better to me. It just maybe you feel too bad about leaving someone out.
Yeah. I guess I see your argument, and this feels like there's like a difference between like a real team. I was like, oh yeah, if I had this roster, I feel great about this roster, and just being like you see it sometimes in football, you know, and it's like here's our team of a tournament, and it's like here's 4 attacking midfielders or something. And it's like but that's not a real team, you know. Whereas this on paper, I actually feel like if you just sign this roster, you'd be like, we could do pretty well in most metas or in most situations. All right, yeah. I'm content with it. I'm content with it. Yeah. I think we've the restraints make it hard because it means you have to you have to sacrifice someone.
Screenshot it and absolutely roast us, but they need to understand that there is like significant context. We could make a 30-second video and just give it to Crazy Raccoons, but presumably that does less well on the advertisements, you know.
Yeah, I think to be fair, we've covered both ends because I think if you look at our like top 3 per role, that essentially would give you a limitless team of the tournament, right? For both of us, you know, like you could figure that one out. Whereas under the restraints, I think we did okay, and I think it also gave us a chance. Like I feel like players like Kevster and Gala maybe wouldn't be that highly rated if we were just to do like the Toronto and Crazy Raccoon show.
Yeah.
All right then, we've solved it. Team of a tournament locked in. So thank you everyone for watching. Obviously put your team of a tournament with the restrictions as well. I don't just want to see anyone posting just Crazy Raccoon and being like, my team's better. You have to do the restrictions because, you know, we weren't scared of the adversity, so you guys have to face the adversity as well. So give them in the comments below and we'll see if anyone can actually do anything that feels better than this team on paper. But thank you very much, Chris. I appreciate your insight and wisdom as always.
It's a pleasure.